Alessio Romano tore the red bakery ticket before the little girl had finished saying number 42 was hers. It happened at 8:17 on a rain-bright Thursday morning in Bell and Birch Bakery, in front of 14 customers, 2 black-suited bodyguards, 1 exhausted delivery boy, and Mabel, who was holding a tray of warm cinnamon knots with one hand and a pair of steel tongs with the other. The little girl stood beside the pastry case in a yellow raincoat, both boots planted on the black and white tile. She was 6, maybe, with a neat braid and the grave face of someone who had already waited 20 minutes because that was what the red paper ticket in her hand required. Alessio had not meant to tear it. That was the first thing everyone would say later, and the part that mattered least. His gloved hand had moved across the counter because people always made room for it. His bodyguard had opened a path because that was what men did when Alessio Romano entered a room. The line had shifted, anxious and obedient, and the little girl had not shifted with it. "I have 42, she said. Alessio's sleeve brushed her wrist. His signet ring caught the cheap red paper. The ticket split with a tiny dry snap. The room went still. The torn halves fluttered down like a pair of wounded petals and landed on Mara's clean counter, right beside a basket of sesame rolls. The little girl stared at them. Alessio stared at them too, as if the paper had committed an offense by being weak enough to tear. Mara set the tray down. One of the bodyguards took a step forward. Mara lifted the steel tongs and pointed them at his chest. "Not another step beside a child in my bakery," she said. The bodyguard froze. The little girl picked up the 2 halves of her ticket. She pressed them together with both hands, then lifted them toward Alessio's black overcoat. Her chin trembled once, not with fear, but with the effort of holding a rule in place when every adult in the room looked ready to drop it. "You tore my number," she said. "So you go to the back and take your own." No one breathed. Alessio Romano was 41, clean-shaven, broad-shouldered, in a black coat, black gloves, and a signet ring heavy enough to warn the room. 2 black SUVs idled outside, rain sliding over tinted glass. Men moved when he looked at them. He had not stood at the back of any line since he was 16. Now a child in a yellow raincoat was holding torn paper at him, as if it were a court order. "Mabel," whispered the woman behind her, a thin neighbor in a purple scarf. "Honey." The girl did not look away from Alessio. "There is a machine," she said, pointing to the red dispenser by the door. "It gives numbers to everybody. You ripped mine. Now you need a new one." From the back. Mara stepped around the counter before anyone could decide the child had gone too far. Flour dusted the front of her green apron. Her brown hair was pinned up with a pencil because both of her clean hair clips had disappeared before dawn. She was 31, tired in the eyes, steady in the spine, and angry in the exact way a woman became angry when someone reached across her counter and made a child smaller. "She's right," Mara said. Alessio's gaze moved from the child to her. "You know who I am. Everybody in this line knows who you are," Mara said. "That is why everybody is waiting to see if you know where the back is." A soft sound moved through the bakery. Not laughter. Too dangerous for that. More like a dozen people trying not to let hope show on their faces. Alessio looked at the red ticket dispenser by the door. Then he looked at the line, which began near the window, curved past the shelves of rye bread, and ended beside a wet umbrella stand. At the end stood Mr. O'Donnell from the florist, still in his rain cape, holding his own ticket with both hands like a passport. Alessio looked back at Mara. "I have business with your landlord." "Then your business can wait behind Mrs. Alvarez's olive loaf," Mara said. Mrs. Alvarez, who was 82 and wore silver sneakers, lifted her chin without lifting her eyes. The bodyguard on Alessio's right leaned close. "Boss, we can clear the room." Mara heard him. She reached behind her, picked up the brass service bell, and set it on the counter in front of the child with a firm little ding. "No," she said. "You can leave, or you can take a number. Those are the 2 doors open in Bell and Birch." His eyes narrowed. The little girl raised the ticket higher. "You made it broken," she said. "You don't get bread first." The word struck an old bruise, but he did not look away. Alessio turned toward the ticket dispenser. The whole bakery watched him take 2 steps. People shifted at once, making a corridor for him instead of a proper end to the line. Mabel saw it before anyone else. "No," she said. Alessio stopped. The little girl pointed with the torn ticket. The back is behind Mr. O'Donnell, not beside the machine. That's cheating. Mr. O'Donnell looked as if he might turn into a coat rack. Alessio looked at Mara. Mara folded her arms. She's still right. A soft, surprised breath moved through the bakery. Alessio heard it and hated that he heard it. If he left, the child would remember that powerful men could ruin small things and walk away. Mara would remember the same. So would he. For the first time in years, Alessio Romano did not know what his face was doing. He walked past the pastry shelves, past the old women pretending not to stare, past the delivery boy clutching 2 empty crates, past Mr. O'Donnell who whispered, "Good morning," as if greeting an executioner in church. Alessio reached the end of the line. The bakery door was behind him. Rain tapped the window. His bodyguards stayed near the counter, confused by the sight of their boss standing behind a man who smelled faintly of carnations. Alessio pulled a red paper ticket from the dispenser. 63. The paper looked ridiculous between his black gloves. Mabel inspected it from across the room. Good. The front door opened hard enough to shake rain from the bell. Cecil Brandt swept in under a black umbrella he handed to no one. He wore a camel coat, glossy shoes, and the warm smile of a man who never had to touch what he broke. His eyes found Alessio at the back of the line, then Mara, then the little girl with the torn ticket. "Mr. Romano," Brandt said, his face going pale with annoyance. "With respect, we have a schedule." Alessio held up the ticket. "Apparently we have 63. The line did not laugh. Not quite. But the warmth that moved through the room reached Mara's cheeks before she could stop it. She rang the brass bell once. "Number 42, she called. "Mabel Lane." Mabel walked to the counter with her torn red ticket held carefully in both hands. Mara placed the currant bun and 2 orange rolls into a brown paper bag, then added a small twist of wax paper. "Extra butter cookie," Mara said quietly. Mabel looked at Alessio at the back of the line. "He has to fix the ticket." Mara nodded. "We will get to that." "No," Mabel said. "Now, if a rule breaks, you fix it before the next person. That's what Miss Mara says when I spill sugar." Mara closed her eyes for 1 second. Alessio looked down at ticket 63. Silas coughed into his fist. Brandt muttered, "This is childish theater." Alessio's voice cut through the room. "Give me tape." Mara opened her eyes. "What?" "Tape," Alessio said. "For the ticket." Mara reached under the counter and took out a small roll of clear tape, the cheap kind that always split wrong. She crossed the bakery herself, past the customers, past Brandt, past Silas, and held it out to him. When Alessio took it, their fingers touched. Mara expected cold leather and got heat through the glove. He expected bakery flour and got a woman who did not tremble when he stood close enough to frighten half the city. "You don't have to perform," she said quietly. "I am not performing." "Then don't make it about you." His eyes sharpened. She lowered her voice further. "If you fix it for her. Not for the room. Not for Brandt. Not to prove you can be nice when watched." No one had spoken to him like that in a decade. No one alive anyway. Alessio turned back to the counter. Mabel brought the torn ticket to him with Mara at her side. The child did not step close until Mara rested one hand lightly on her shoulder. "Can I?" Alessio asked. Mabel studied him. "You ask before taking." "Yes. That is better." She gave him the 2 pieces. Alessio Romano, whose signature could move freight across 3 states by midnight, stood at the back of a bakery line and tried to repair a child's red ticket with a cheap roll of tape. The tape stuck to his glove. It folded. The customers watched him fail at a task a school volunteer could have done in 10 seconds. Mabel sighed. "You need to put it flat." "I see that. You don't see it if it's stuck to your thumb." Mara pressed her lips together. Alessio peeled the tape free with care that looked almost painful. "Perhaps you should instruct me." Mabel nodded solemnly, as if she had been waiting for him to reach this reasonable conclusion. "First, put the numbers together," she said. "Not crooked. If it's crooked, it still works, but it looks sad." Alessio lined the torn halves on the top of a flour sack Mara had set on the counter. "Now tape across," Mabel said. "Not over the 42. It has to still say 42. He did it. The repaired ticket lay under his hand, imperfect, clear tape shining over the tear. Mabel bent over it with the focus of a judge. "It's okay," she said. "It should not have mattered." It did. Alessio looked at Mara. "Is the rule fixed?" "Partly. What remains?" Mara held his gaze. "An apology." Brandt made a strangled sound. Silas looked at the ceiling. Mr. O'Donnell examined a loaf of rye as if it contained divine instruction. Alessio's jaw tightened. Mabel waited. The word sat in his mouth like a coin he could not swallow. Sorry. He had bought silence, repairs, loyalty, exits. He had compensated damage before people knew damage had happened. He had ordered men to send flowers, pay debts, rebuild storefronts, replace doors, cover emergency debts, forgive loans. He had said many things that made people step back. He did not say sorry, because sorry put the speaker below the thing done. Because sorry admitted a line existed and he had crossed it. Because his father, a mean man in a cheap suit, had once laughed at a boy who apologized for bumping a plate and said, "Never kneel with your mouth, Alessio. They hear it forever." Mara did not know that. Mabel did not know that. The bakery did not know that. They only knew that he had torn the ticket. Alessio crouched, not fully, but enough to meet the child's eyes without looming over her. Silas shifted, uncomfortable. Brandt looked as if the floor had opened. "I am sorry I tore your ticket," Alessio said. The words came rough but clean. "I reached without asking. I made your number broken. I was wrong." Mabel considered him. "And?" Alessio blinked. Mara looked away quickly, but he saw the corner of her mouth move. "And?" he said, searching for the rule. "I went to the back of the line. And you won't rip other people's numbers." "And I won't rip other people's numbers." Mabel nodded. "Okay." The bakery began breathing again. Mara held out Mabel's paper bag. "Your rolls." Mabel accepted it, then handed the repaired red ticket back to Alessio. "You should keep it until your number." He looked at the taped ticket in his palm. "Why?" "So you remember." She walked away with her bag, leaving the most feared man in 3 neighborhoods holding a child's repaired ticket, and his own number 63. The story should have ended there. It did not. Because Cecil Brandt had not come to Bell and Birch to watch his employer learn bakery etiquette. He had come to close a neighborhood door and open a private one. At 8:43 the cinnamon knots sold out. At 8:51, the rain softened into a mist that made the windows glow. At 9:02, Mara's morning delivery still had not arrived. She checked the clock above the espresso machine, checked the empty crate rack, then turned her face away so no customer could read the calculation moving behind her eyes. Alessio read it anyway. He had moved up 3 places in line. Ticket 63 remained in his left hand. The repaired 42 lay beneath it, a red reminder tucked against black leather. "Problem?" he asked. Mara was at the counter wiping sesame seeds into her palm. "Nothing that concerns ticket 63. You have no flour in the rear stack." She stilled. "The door to your storeroom is open," he said. "I can see the bottom shelf." "You inspect bakeries from the line?" "I inspect rooms that are lying." "The room isn't lying. My supplier is late." Brandt, who had retreated near the front window to make angry texts, looked up. "Supply interruption is listed in my memo." Mara turned slowly. "You filed a memo about my flour?" "About your unreliability," Brandt said. "This is exactly the pattern ownership is concerned about." "Ownership," Mara said, "is a dead woman, her daughter, and a loan you keep pretending changed hands. The building transferred to Romano Holdings last winter." The line murmured. Alessio's gaze cut to Brandt. Brandt lifted his palms. "A shell acquisition, sir. Standard. Distressed retail package." It was in the quarterly. Alessio had not read the quarterly. Not the page with old bakeries, barbershops, and a dance studio above a laundromat. Men like Brandt were paid to turn small doors into numbers. Men like Alessio were paid by history to make sure the numbers landed where he wanted. Mara heard the silence between them. Her face closed. "So you do own my lease," she said to Alessio. "Apparently. And you came here to check whether I was worth keeping." He looked at the taped red ticket. "I came because Brandt said you refused an access clause for private catering." "Private catering," Mara said. Means your upstairs club gets my ovens from 6 to 10 every morning and my customers get told to come back after lunch. It means Mrs. Alvarez walks 3 blocks in the rain and finds a locked door. It means Mabel's mother, who cleans offices overnight, cannot pick up breakfast before school drop-off. It means I become an employee in my own bakery, while men who don't know the price of yeast drink espresso beside my oven. Her voice did not rise. That made it worse. Alessio looked toward Brandt. Is that what you offered? Brandt smiled too quickly. A profitable restructure. Is that what you offered? The current model is sentimental. Sentiment, Mara said. Paid rent during construction when your people forgot we existed behind scaffolding. Miss Bell, Brandt said. Mara, Alessio said. She looked back at him, startled by the use of her name. Show me your delivery invoice. No. Brandt almost smiled. Alessio's eyes narrowed. No. No, Mara repeated. Not because I'm hiding it. Because ticket 63 has not been called, and you are asking me to jump because your voice expects it. I don't jump in my bakery. I serve numbers. The line went silent again, but differently this time. Less fear. More anticipation. Alessio stared at her. Mara stared back. The repaired ticket felt warm in his hand. Then call the next number, he said. Mara lifted the brass bell. 43, she called. It took 28 minutes for Alessio to reach the counter. He felt every one of them. At first, anger kept him upright. Not loud anger. Alessio did not waste loudness. His was the cold, organized kind that put names into boxes and decided which ones would be opened later. Brandt. Quarterly. Shell acquisition. Access clause. Delayed delivery. Then the anger thinned, because waiting gave him nothing to do but notice. He noticed Mara's hands first. They never stopped. She wrapped bread while answering questions. She sliced rye with even pressure. She cleaned the slicer before touching the nut-free rolls. She remembered that Mrs. Alvarez wanted the heel of the olive loaf because she liked to toast it twice. She sent the delivery boy into the back with a cup of cocoa and a warning not to lift crates with his wrists bent. She turned away a man who tried to buy the last 3 apple twists because a school aide had ordered them yesterday for a classroom with no snack fund. 2 are available, Mara told him. The third has a name. I'll pay double, the man said. The third still has a name. Alessio watched the man take 2 apple twists and leave with the confused expression of someone who had discovered money was not a universal key. He knew that expression. He was wearing it. Mabel returned at 9:24 with butter on her chin and Mrs. Alvarez at her side. The little girl did not stand in line this time. She sat at the small round table by the window where children colored paper bags for weekend bread bundles. There were no drawings on the table today, only a stack of blank bags and a cup of red pencils. She watched Alessio wait. Every few minutes, she checked his feet to make sure he had not moved ahead. He found this insulting. He also stayed exactly where he was. At number 51, the delayed supplier called. Mara answered, listened, and said, "You canceled my order yesterday." Alessio's head lifted. Mara's face changed by half an inch. That was enough. "No," she said into the phone. "I have the confirmation code. I spoke to Ren at 4:12. You sent me the paid invoice." Pause. "Who told you building management suspended access?" Brandt slid his phone into his pocket. Mara looked at him. "I see," she said into the phone. "Thank you for telling me the truth." She hung up. The bakery had gone quiet again, but now every quiet pointed at Brandt. "You canceled my flour," Mara said. Brandt's expression hardened. "I protected the ownership interest from waste. You tried to starve the morning line and call it my failure. You are emotional. I am accurate." Mabel stood up from the children's table. "You should take a number before you talk." A woman near the shelves made a sound that was definitely a laugh this time. Brandt flushed. Someone removed that child from the conversation. Alessio moved then. Not toward the child. Toward Brandt. The line parted then stopped because Alessio stopped himself. He had stepped out of place. The old instinct was there. Cross the room, put a hand on Brandt's shoulder. Speak low enough that the man would feel his future rearrange. Alessio could do it. He wanted to do it. Every person in the bakery expected him to do it. Then Mabel's voice came from the window table. You're leaving your number. Alessio looked down. Ticket 63 was still in his left hand. He was standing beside ticket 52. The room held its breath. This was the place where the old Alessio would have let the rule bend because anger was useful and power was faster. He felt the old shape of himself waiting, elegant and brutal, offering the comfort of control. Mara watched him. Not begging. Not impressed. Just watching to see which man he would choose to be while holding a child's repaired ticket. Alessio took one step back. Then another. He returned to his place in line. The movement was small. The cost was not. Mabel nodded. Good. Alessio looked at Mara. When my number is called, I would like to see your invoice. Mara's face softened before she caught it. When your number is called, you may ask. And Brandt. Brandt can stand quietly or leave. Alessio glanced at Silas. Silas opened the front door. Brandt stiffened. You cannot be serious. Stand quietly, Alessio said, or leave. Brandt stayed. Men like him often stayed when they thought dignity could be recovered later. At 9:39 Mara rang the bell. 63. Alessio stepped to the counter. He had imagined this moment 28 minutes ago, and imagined himself winning it. Now the victory felt smaller than the ticket in his hand. Mara stood opposite him, flower on one cheek, green apron tied tight, eyes clear. Good morning, she said. What can I get you? The line watched. Mabel watched. Alessio looked at the pastry case. He did not know what he wanted. That was another unfamiliar thing. What is good? Everything, Mara said. What would you give a man who has never waited properly? Her mouth curved. Day-old sourdough. Humbling texture. A laugh moved through the bakery before fear could stop it. Alessio felt his own mouth almost answer. 1 currant bun, he said. 2 orange rolls. And whatever Mrs. Alvarez was pretending not to want. Mrs. Alvarez called from her table. I heard that. You were meant to. Mara reached for a paper bag. Anything else? Alessio set ticket 63 on the counter. Then he placed the repaired red 42 beside it. Your invoice, he said. Please. She studied him. You paid for bread first. I waited for bread first. There is a difference. I am beginning to understand that everyone in this bakery lives by differences I have been paying other men to erase. Mara looked down at the repaired ticket. For the first time that morning, she looked tired enough for him to see what the place cost her. Not weak. Never weak. Just human. A woman holding warmth together with tape, tongs, and rules because if she let one thing slide, men like Brandt would call the slide proof of collapse. She turned, opened the drawer beneath the register, and took out a folder with bent corners. 3 invoices, she said. Paid flour, canceled delivery, duplicate rent demand. Building management sent me a warning last week, because someone reported obstruction in the front service area. That obstruction was Mrs. Alvarez's walker. I do not use walkers, Mrs. Alvarez said. Folding cart. Mara corrected without looking back. Alessio opened the folder. His world was built on paper. Men thought power lived in fists, but they were usually amateurs. Power lived in signatures, dates, transfer codes, leases, courier receipts, and the small dishonest gaps between one document and another. Brandt had left gaps everywhere. The cancelled flour order had been flagged by a management email sent from an assistant no longer employed by the building. The duplicate rent demand used an old account number. The obstruction complaint had been filed at 6:11 in the morning on a day the bakery did not open until 7. Alessio read in silence. Mara did not interrupt. She served number 64 over his shoulder. He liked that more than he should have. By the time he finished, Brandt had begun to sweat. Alessio closed the folder. You forged access complaints. Brandt's smile twitched. Streamlined documentation. You canceled paid supplies. To demonstrate operational fragility. You charged duplicate rent. Temporary escrow. Mara leaned on the counter. You see how pretty theft becomes when he wears a camel coat? Alessio looked at her. She did not look away. He looked back at Brandt. You used my name to pressure a bakery into default. For the portfolio. No, Alessio said. For yourself. Brandt's eyes flashed. You think this place matters? It's 32 seats and a sentimental client base. The upstairs club alone could triple the revenue. The upstairs club can wait. Mabel at the table raised both thumbs. Alessio saw Mara see it and try not to smile. That smile did something inconvenient inside his chest. He told Silas, "Call Ren at the supplier. The flour delivery comes now. If the truck needs a dock, our loading bay opens. If it needs a driver, send one. If someone says building access is suspended, tell them building access is standing in line with ticket 63. Silas nodded once and stepped outside. Brandt's mouth opened. Alessio held up one finger. Brandt closed it. You, Alessio said, will sit at that table and write in your own hand every instruction you sent under my company's name regarding Bell and Birch. That's absurd. You can write in the bakery, or you can write in a room with no pastries and less patience." Brandt looked toward the door, then at Mara, then at the line of customers who had stopped pretending not to listen. Mara reached under the counter and produced a pencil. It was the same pencil that had been in her hair. She held it out. "Try not to break this too." Brandt took it. Alessio should have admired the efficiency of the insult. Instead, he admired her hand. The next hour changed the bakery, but not in the dramatic way stories like to pretend. No thunder arrived. No wall collapsed. No one confessed into a spotlight. The flour truck arrived at 10:06, guided by one of Alessio's black SUVs through alley traffic. Silas carried the first sack in because the delivery boy's wrist still bothered him. Mara corrected his grip and told him not to twist his back. "He's lifted heavier," Alessio said from the counter. "Then he can learn to lift smarter," Mara said. Silas obeyed her. That pleased Alessio in a way that should have worried him. Mabel sat at the children's table and drew a red rectangle on a paper bag, then taped a line across it. Under it she wrote in careful block letters, "Fix the number." Mara saw it and whispered, "No signs on customer bags." "It's not a sign," Mabel said. "It's a history. History goes in the notebook." Then Mr. Romano should have a notebook. Alessio, who had been reviewing Brandt's written list, looked up. "Mr. Romano has several. Do they have stickers?" "No. That's why you forgot about waiting." Mara bent over a tray so fast that flour puffed around her face. Alessio decided with grave seriousness not to smile. By noon, Brandt had filled 3 pages with names, dates, and the kind of careful omissions that guilty men mistook for cleverness. Alessio read them while Mara cut thick slices from the first new sourdough batch. "He did not act alone," Alessio said. "Men like him rarely do," Mara said. "You expected that?" "I expected him to be worse than he looked. Rich men who smile at closing notices usually are. I am a rich man. You didn't smile at the ticket." He looked at her. She continued wrapping bread, but there was color in her cheeks now, not from the ovens. "You did glare at it," she added. "It offended me." "By existing? By stopping me. That's what numbers are for." "You say that as if it is simple." Mara glanced toward Mabel, who was helping Mrs. Alvarez put rolls into her cart. "Simple is not the same as easy." Alessio held the repaired ticket between 2 fingers. "She told me to keep this until my number." "Then keep it." "I have been called. Maybe it isn't finished teaching." He slid the ticket into the inside pocket of his overcoat. Mara watched the movement. Something in her expression shifted before she locked it away. He wanted to know what she had hidden. That was unwise. Alessio had built his life on knowing which wants could become liabilities. Wanting a bakery manager who challenged him in front of children, suppliers, old women, and his own employees was not a manageable category. It belonged with storms and unpaid debts from God. So he did what he understood. He fixed the immediate problem. "Romano Holdings will withdraw the access clause," he said. Mara set down the bread tongs. "Just like that?" "No. With paperwork. Paperwork can change back." "Not mine. Brandt's had your letterhead." The answer landed cleanly because it was fair. Alessio nodded. "Then you will have copies filed with the city, your attorney, and the neighborhood merchants board. The lease remains yours. Morning ovens remain yours. Any private catering request goes through you, not building management, and can be refused without penalty." Mara's throat moved. "I cannot pay for a new attorney." "You do not need a new attorney. Her face hardened. He hurt himself and corrected before she could. Not because I will own the problem. Because the forged complaints create liability on my side. My counsel will repair the damage my company allowed. You will have independent review before you sign anything. I will pay for that too. And you will not owe me gratitude. Mara held very still. That was almost a proper sentence, she said. Almost. You said my company allowed. You didn't say I allowed. Silas, near the flour sacks, suddenly found the labels fascinating. Alessio looked at the bakery line. Customers had thinned, but not enough. Mabel was still close enough to hear. And she was definitely listening. He looked back at Mara. I allowed men under my name to harm this bakery, he said. I was wrong. Mabel called, good one. Mara covered her mouth with the back of her wrist. Alessio's eyes warmed despite himself. Is she always like this? Only when adults make it necessary. Then I hope to become less necessary. Mara's smile appeared before she could stop it this time. It was small, real, tired, warm enough to make the bakery seem brighter than the morning outside. Alessio forgot, for one reckless second, that he was a man people feared. Then Brandt knocked over the chair. He had risen too fast, pages clutched in one hand, face flushed with the panic of a man who finally understood that charm had lost the room. Silas moved toward him, but Mara was closer. She stepped in front of Mabel without looking, as natural as breathing. Not dramatic. Not frantic. One arm extended, palm back, child behind her, eyes on Brandt. Sit down, Mara said. Brandt pointed at Alessio. You are letting a bakery girl humiliate your office in public. Mara's face went quiet. Alessio recognized that quiet. It was not hurt. It was classification. Brandt had just placed himself in the smallest possible box. Bakery girl, she repeated. Mara, Alessio said low. She lifted a hand without looking at him. Wait. The word was not spoken, but he heard it. And because something impossible had been happening all morning, Alessio waited. Mara took one step closer to Brandt. My mother opened this bakery with a used oven and 3 folding chairs. When the school flooded, she made sandwiches for children who were not hers. When the heat went out in the senior building, she kept soup on the back burner for 2 days. When your scaffolding blocked our window, I carried bread to customers on the sidewalk so they would know we were still open. I know the rent. I know the oven belts. I know who needs sugar-free rolls and who lies about being fine because they cannot afford lunch. If you call me bakery girl again, make sure you can do my job for 1 hour without burning the morning down. Brandt had no answer. Alessio did. He said, You are done. Brandt looked at him. With my company, Alessio said. With this building. With every lease you have touched under my name. You cannot fire me because she gave a speech. No, Alessio said. I can fire you because she gave evidence. He held up the 3 written pages. Brandt's eyes went to the door. Silas was already there. No one touched him. No one needed to. Brandt walked out under the weight of all the room's eyes, leaving his umbrella behind. Mabel pointed at it. He forgot his thing. Mrs. Alvarez said, Let it wait. The laugh came freely this time. It rolled through the bakery, not cruel, not soft, simply relieved. The sound struck Alessio harder than fear ever had. Fear made rooms neat. Relief made them human. Mara leaned against the counter for one breath. Only one. Then she straightened. Number 68. Mara, Alessio said. The line continues. You need rest. I need to sell the rye before it turns into a brick. You have been on your feet since when? 4. This morning. Most mornings are morning. He did not smile. Sit for 5 minutes. Her eyebrows rose. Did you just order me to sit in my own bakery? The room sharpened with interest. Alessio felt the edge of the lesson and stopped before stepping over it. No, he said. I am asking badly. Mabel appeared at Mara's elbow with a stool from the children's table. Miss Mara says tired people make crooked frosting. Traitor, Mara murmured. It's a rule. Alessio picked up the brass bell. I can call numbers. Mara stared at him. You can absolutely not call numbers. Why? Because if you call 70 before 69, Mrs. Alvarez will riot. I will risk it. I will not. Mabel lifted a red pencil. I can help him. That worries me more, Mara said. But she sat. Only because the child had placed the stool behind her knees. Only because the line had seen enough of her pride for one day. Only because Alessio did not touch her elbow or make a grand display of helping. He simply stood at the counter, ticket list in front of him, and asked, "Who has 68? A hand rose near the door. Alessio called the number. Badly. Mabel corrected his volume. Mara corrected his pronunciation of Paxki. Mrs. Alvarez corrected his attitude when he tried to wrap rye like a parcel being used to hide evidence. Silas, after being taught the difference between wax paper and parchment, wrapped 3 loaves with the grim concentration of a man defusing a bomb, though no bomb existed except Mara's standards. For 20 minutes, the bakery ran with the most feared man in the neighborhood at the register and Mara Bell seated on a stool beside him, arms folded, pretending she was not impressed by how quickly he learned once he accepted that learning was required. He did not smile for customers. That would have been too much. But he listened. He repeated orders back. He waited for Mara's nod before touching the register. When a teenager tried to slip ahead because he was late, Alessio pointed to the dispenser without looking up. "Number," he said. Mabel beamed. At 1:12 the last morning ticket was called. The bakery smelled of sugar, rain, yeast, and the tired sweetness of a room that had survived its own test. Mara sent Mabel home with Mrs. Alvarez and a bag of rolls for her mother. The child paused at the door, looked at Alessio, and pointed 2 fingers at her own eyes, then at the pocket where the repaired ticket rested. "Remember." Alessio touched the pocket. "I will." When the door closed behind her, the room felt larger and more fragile. Mara gathered trays without speaking. Alessio waited until she had put the last tray on the rack before he placed the repaired red 42 beside the brass bell. "Keep it here," he said. "Mabel told you to keep it. She told me to remember. I can remember better if the rule lives where I broke it." Mara looked at the cheap paper, the crooked tape, the number still visible beneath the shine. Then she took an empty jam jar, slid the ticket inside, and set it beside the register. It looked foolish and solemn at once, like a museum display for a kingdom made of bread. "The torn red ticket," she said. "A blunt name. This is a bakery, not an opera. Fair." Silas returned with the attorney before Alessio could answer. Mara read every page twice. She challenged 3 clauses, crossed out 1 phrase, and refused to sign anything that made Bell and Birch grateful instead of protected. Alessio watched her work with the same attention he gave hostile contracts. She was not trying to impress him. That was the impressive part. By 4, the false complaints were withdrawn. By 5, the duplicate rent was marked for return. By 5:30, the delivery access clause was replaced with 1 sentence Mara approved. Morning ovens belonged to Bell and Birch. Any private order waited behind neighborhood pickup, or it did not happen at all. Alessio signed where his company had to sign. Mara did not thank him immediately. She checked the copies first. "Good," he said. "Good that I checked? Good that you never stopped." Her face softened, then guarded itself. "Do not turn this into a romance because a child made you behave for 1 morning. I was going to ask if I could come back tomorrow. That depends on." She pointed to the red dispenser by the door. Alessio looked at it, then at her. "I take a number. Every time. No bodyguards near the children's table. No private orders before the line. No saving me in a way that makes the bakery less mine." Each rule landed harder than a threat because every one of them was fair. "Yes," he said. Mara reached beneath the counter and took out a small paper bag. "Day-old sourdough. Humbling texture. Is this a reward? A warning? If you skip the line, I sell you 2. He took the bag and their fingers almost touched. Almost was enough to make both of them look away. 1 week later, Bell and Birch opened under a clear Saturday sky. The torn red ticket stood in its jar beside the bell. Children tapped the glass before taking numbers. Mrs. Alvarez told the story as if she had personally commanded a criminal empire to behave, which Mara allowed because the woman bought 3 loaves every weekend and corrected the ending only when it became completely impossible. Alessio arrived at 8:30 in his black overcoat, clean-shaven, gloved, followed by Silas and 1 other guard who stopped outside without being told. The bakery quieted, then watched him cross to the door. He took a number. Mabel inspected it from the children's table. 31. No folding. Good. I am improving, Alessio said. You still stand too close to the machine. He moved back 6 inches. Mara covered a smile with the back of her wrist. What can I do for ticket 31 when ticket 31 is called? Alessio set a folder on the end of the counter. Not in front of the register. Not ahead of anyone's order. Lease corrections. Restitution schedule. Proof that Brandt's complaints were withdrawn. Your independent counsel approved the language this morning. Bell and Birch stays yours. The building around it can change hands. The name, the ovens, the morning line, and the renewal option do not. Mara stared at the folder. The line went quiet in a new way. You waited to tell me in public, she said. The room that watched it threaten should watch it returned. That is dangerously close to theater. Mabel approved the timing. Mabel raised her hand. I did. Mara looked at the child, then at the Jared ticket, then at the counter her mother had sanded by hand. Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. Maribel did not need tears to prove something mattered. She picked up the brass bell and rang it once. Number 31, she said. Alessio stepped forward only after Mrs. Alvarez nodded that the order before him was complete. He placed his ticket on the counter. Mara came around the register, took his bare hand when he removed his glove, and held it in front of the whole bakery. It was not surrender. It was not rescue. It was gratitude with its spine intact. Coffee, she said. After my number? After your number. And after you help Mabel refill the dispenser. Carefully. Mabel brought the fresh roll of red tickets as if carrying a crown no one was allowed to call a crown. She showed Alessio how to open the machine, slide the paper in, and feed the first ticket through without bending the edge. Not too hard, she said. It has to give everybody a turn. Alessio's hands, which had signed contracts that scared grown men, moved gently around the cheap red paper. The first ticket came free cleanly. 1. Mabel grinned. Now he knows. And he did. He knew the back of the line. He knew the sound of Mara's bell. He knew the weight of cheap paper that held more law than most contracts. He knew power did not become smaller when it learned to wait. It became less stupid, less lonely, and less likely to tear what it did not understand. The torn red ticket stayed in its jar beside the register. New customers laughed at the story until they saw Alessio Romano standing quietly between a florist and a retired school secretary, holding number 31 like it mattered. Because it did. When Mara looked across the counter at him, warmth lit her tired eyes. Good morning, she said. What can I get you? Alessio looked at the woman, the bakery, the Jared red ticket, the line behind him, and the little girl in yellow who had forced a king of locked doors to learn the mercy of waiting. Whatever is left when everyone before me has been served, he said. Mara smiled. Now that, she said, is how you order.